Let's talk about your decision to go back to school. What was involved with the decision to go back to Idaho State?
Well, we knew that we didn't want to spend our lives in Afton, Wyoming. That Dad wanted his career to go a little beyond that. And Idaho State was the love of our life because we had met there, we were young marrieds there, Dad graduated from there. I went to school somewhat there until I got married. And he played sports. We just loved. We thought our greatest desire would be to stay in Pocatello the rest of our lives. We loved Pocatello. That was very special to us. And they were just starting a master's degree program at that. It used to be Idaho State College, and somewhere along the way it became Idaho State University, and I don't remember when that happened. But it was the first year that they were offering master's degrees. And so we got the letter from them, and we wanted to do this. We knew that would further Dad's career to have an additional degree, and so we just planned to go back there. And do you want me to go ahead and start talking about Idaho State? When we had lived there as undergraduate students, the last place we had lived had been, they called it Campus Drive or University Row, but it had been it was little one-bedroom prefabricated houses that were just in a row, and originally it was faculty housing. So when Dad was a senior and we lived there, they took care of their athletes, and we needed a two-bedroom apartment since Reed was outgrowing his little bassinet, and we needed a place for him. So we had lived in there as students. When we went back as graduate students, they had pretty much changed that so that it was all student housing. And there was the traditional row where we'd lived as undergraduates. Then there was the library, and then there was the football parking and the football field. And right in the corner of the parking area was one of these houses that was sitting, I think there were two of them, kind of by themselves, close to the library. We parked in the corner of the football parking lot. And that's where we lived when we went back. And it was a two-bedroom, so we had room for Reed and Karen. We had bunk beds that we'd bought in Afton. And they had one bedroom for them and a bedroom for Dad and I. And a little, the washer fit in the kitchen. We had our own washer. And the dryer, there was a little storage unit right at the front of the house, not very big. And we put our clothes dryer in that. So we did have a washer and a dryer when we went back to school there. And that's where we lived. And
now, did you rent a truck? How did you get your belongings from?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't remember, but whether we borrowed or rented, we got us, and it was an unfurnished apartment, and so we had the furniture that we had purchased in Afton, and that was the furniture that we had then. And most of Dad's classes were afternoon and evening classes because that's how they fit the classes into the university schedule. And so he became an assistant to the football team. And I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but it's a fun thing to remember. In the whole history of Idaho State up to this day, there were 3 undefeated teams. One was a freshman football team when they were still having freshmen, and then varsity too. And that was Dad's first year quarterbacking, and he quarterbacked that unbeaten freshman football team. And then his senior year, as an athlete playing varsity and quarterbacking, that was their second undefeated season. And then when we went back for the graduate school experience and he became an assistant coach to the varsity then, that was their third undefeated season. So other than other coaches, Dad was the only one who was associated with all three of the undefeated teams at Idaho State. And he went to college, he went to Idaho State on a basketball scholarship, and just to fill in his time, because he loved all sports and he was good at all sports, he'd gone out for football, made the team, and had the undefeated season as a freshman. And it overlapped into the basketball season, and the basketball coach was so mad. Even though it was a basketball scholarship that he was on, scholarships didn't amount to much, it was mostly just paying your tuition, furnishing you with a campus job or something. But the basketball coach said he didn't want him on his basketball team. He had to choose between the two, and Dad chose football. So if he couldn't do both, but he played intramural basketball, and they usually whooped their other opponents. I don't have a record of that, but he had a great time playing intramural basketball. And that was really, that's how he got involved, not personally, but with the boxing program. Idaho State did boxing, and so Dad actually taught at Afton, Wyoming 1 year, introduced a boxing program at Afton, Wyoming. But anyhow, we went back there. Dad's classes were in the afternoon or evenings. We lived right next door to the library and the campus right beyond that. In fact, we were probably considered part of the campus. So I decided I had a year and a half college, and that I would try to take a few more classes. And so I would schedule a class or two. We were only there a year, so I picked up another half year of college credit by taking classes when Dad could stay with Reed and Karen. We didn't have to get babysitters. He stayed home and studied, and I ran up on campus and took some classes, and mostly education and literature, because I wanted to be an English major and a teacher were my goals. And so I picked up another half a year at school. And our money, we had saved our money, and we thought that maybe if we were lucky it would last. And we could see by the middle of the year that we were not going to make it. And the athletic department hired me as a secretary. I was a secretary to the AD and to the coaches. And so I was right in my element with Dad to be there. And Dad took care of the kids most of the time. Once in a while we had to farm them out someplace else. But we did that pretty much with the two of us handling the care of the children. And I took shorthand, and my shorthand was, back from high school, it wasn't very good. I had a good memory, and I would do the shorthand as best I could. And one funny experience, because they trusted me with everything, those coaches, they thought I was the cat's meow for secretary, because I was pretty efficient. And Debbie Holt was the track coach, and I think he assisted some in football too. He was so good that he became an Olympic coach for one of the U.S. Olympics. And he would give me these letters, and he dictated it to me, and he put Debbie Holt. Debbie Holt. Or I thought it was W. Holt. And so I wrote those letters. He'd just say sign it and send it. And I wrote those letters, and I actually had them taken to the post office, the campus post office, to be mailed. And it hit me that it wasn't W. Holt, it was Dubby, which was his nickname, but he'd signed it Dubby Holt. And I would have died if that letter had gone out. So I scooted over to the campus post office and was able to retrieve that letter. I don't know whether it was one or two, and retyped them and sent them. He he never knew the difference, but Dad became acquainted with the man who was head of the academic side of physical education, Dr. Anderson, and he was widowed with, I think, 3 little girls, and he loved Dad, and we would go, when he had to go to a conference or out of town for something, we would take our 2 little children and go up to his house and stay with his 3 little girls while he was gone. And he was the one that encouraged Dad to not only be interested in the coaching end of the profession, but in the teaching end of it, and to become a professional in physical education. He was a great influence on our life then. And so when Dad was getting close to graduation, he did it all in 1 year. They made that master program so that he finished it in 1 year, including the summer following. And we wondered where we would get a job, and Eastern Washington College of Education, I don't remember where, somewhere in Eastern Washington, Dad went up and interviewed, and they hired him. And it was his only offer, so he accepted it. We hadn't finished the year. He was still in classes. And then Idaho State decided they wanted another assistant coach, and they offered Dad the job. So we went, and we thought we were giving enough time to Eastern Washington not to leave them in the hole since it was early. We told him we didn't want to be there, and then so he was offered this job as an assistant coach at Idaho State, and we thought, dreams come true. This is what we've always wanted. We'll just live here. Well, one of the PE teachers, he had, Burton Fernelius, had moved, was teaching at Cal State Northridge in Southern California. I had taken an archery class from him, and Dad had probably taken classes from him. He knew us both very, very well. He was LDS, and an opportunity came at Cal State LA, and he recommended Reed. The athletic director at Cal State LA was Baron Losey. He was Mormon. The president of the university was McDonald. I can't remember his first. Howard, maybe McDonald. He was LDS, and they knew Reed was LDS, and he came very highly recommended by Burton Fernelius. And so they offered him a job, and he turned him down. He said, no, I'm not interested. And they would wait a little while, and then they'd offer him a job again, and he would refuse it. Finally, I think it was Burton Fernelius that called. He knew, he had found out that I worked in the athletic office, so he called me at work one day in the athletic office and tried to talk me into influencing Dad to take this job in California. He thought it would be a great opportunity. So I went home to Dad and I said, you know, they'll pay our way out and back. We shouldn't just say no without looking at it. And so they paid for both of us to come. And we went down to Los Angeles, interviewed for that job. And the plum that made us decide to go there was they would not only hire him as an assistant football coach, but they would give him professorial status. He was hired as an assistant professor of physical education. And so it was a dual offer that he could pursue both the professional side of physical education and also the athletic side of it. And we had been told that once you were given that professorial rank, if you changed and went to another university, they didn't downgrade you. The rank stayed with you. And we thought, well, we'll just stay here a year or two. We've got that professorial rank. Then we could go anywhere we want, and it would be a big boost to his career. And so that's what prompted us to leave our Idaho State that we loved. And Dean Thomas was one of his football buddies, a cousin of Lamont Jones, Dad's best friend. And he had gone through the football program too, and he was so envious that Dad had been the one they chose to be an assistant coach. So he was thrilled to death to have us go to California because they offered the assistant's job to him, and he became part of the Idaho State coaching staff. But we packed up. We were used to being involved in the church when we went back that year to Idaho State. And so we went to church faithfully every Sunday morning, never to sacrament meeting. But we went, I took our children to primary. I took the little next door neighbor whose parents were LDS but inactive. I took him to primary with us every week, and so we thought that we were active members of the church. We never had a visiting teacher. We never had a home teacher. We never had a visit from the bishopric. We never had any involvement on their part. It was just a matter of us being willing to go and be a part of that program. And the bishop was a man that I had known a little bit from when we were first married, and I worked for an insurance company downtown, because he was a very good friend of one of the partners that worked in this insurance office, and I'd seen him coming and going. I can't remember his name. In his defense, it was a very, very large congregation, and they were in the process of building a new building, and they were going to move with it. And I think he was just overwhelmed. When I say we never had a visitor, I'm just telling you the facts. But we were never offended by it. The only time anybody knocked at our door were some stake missionaries that knocked looking for somebody to teach, and we told them they were members, and we thought, that's interesting. They'll go back and report us, and maybe we'll get a home teacher or visiting teacher, but we never did. But it didn't deter us. We stayed at that level of activity and enjoyed that association. I joined with Joyce Thomas, Dean's wife. We joined a weeknight bowling group. We went bowling one night a week. It was with a ladies group, and I was never a really good bowler, but good enough that I had fun. And we bowled, and I can't remember of any other activity. There was a little playground. One thing I'd like to tell on Little Reed. There was a playground across from the homes that were mostly the one bedrooms. We were clear out here on the end. But there was a playground that was all chain link fenced in, and there were clotheslines, so if people didn't have washers, they could hang their clothes. So the children could go and play with swings and slides and whatever, and be protected, because it was all fenced in. And I gave Reed responsibilities. Maybe you always do that with your first one. When we lived at Afton, and he was only 4 years old, I would let him and Karen ride their little trikes down a block to the elementary school playground by themselves, or maybe with another neighbor child. It was a different life. You didn't worry about somebody doing harm to your children. And I would always say to Reed, now you look after your little sister. You take care of your little sister. And I had always given him that responsibility. So when we were in Pocatello, the same thing held true. One day I let him take his little sister to this little very safe playground and play, and I was doing something in the house, and when I went to find him, he wasn't there. They had gone with another little boy who was playing there, who lived out onto the street, the main thoroughfare, which was the highway going through Provo, Pocatello, excuse me. And so it had a fair amount of traffic, and he had taken his little sister across that busy street, probably where the stoplight was, but nevertheless had gone to this little boy's house. And when I found him and he came home, I was a little stern with him, and I had a yardstick, a wooden yardstick that hung up on a nail in my kitchen. And I said, Reed, you did not take care of your sister. Mind you, he's 4 years old. maybe turning 5, and she's 3, closer to 5 and 3, but still pretty young for that kind of a responsibility. And I said, I'm going to have to spank you with my ruler. I was not much for corporal punishment, but it was always there, you know, as a deterrent, the threat of it. And I said, but I want to feed you your dinner first. So I'm going to feed you your dinner, and then I'm going to have to give you some spanks with the yardstick because you disobeyed me and put your little sister and you in danger. So he sat up and ate dinner, and Dad was off at class. It was just me and the 2 little kids. He got up from his dinner, went into the kitchen, got the yardstick down from its hanging place, and brought it to me so that I could spank him. He was a very obedient, good boy. Of all of our children, I think I would have to rank him as the easiest to rear from birth on up, that he was just very obedient. And I can't remember, I think I gave him a little tap on there, but I really didn't spank him with that stick because I was so touched that he was so obedient and knew that he deserved a spanking, and so he got the stick to bring to me.
Now, did you say you taught church-wise? Did you have a calling in Pocatello?
No.
You just went to Sunday school?
I just went to Sunday school and took the kids to primary. No, we were invisible to them. I wasn't a visiting teacher, I wasn't anything, but I faithfully went.
Okay, and your spare time was tied up when taking classes. Now, did you get an associate's degree or any type of a degree from
No.
out of state?
I had 2 years, but I didn't even know an associate degree existed, and if it did, I didn't know if I'd ever had the right classes. But I did so well in my education methods of teaching science and reading and things, those are the types of classes that I was teaching, that the professor who taught those classes recommended me, if we had stayed in Pocatello. I had a job at Marsh Valley Elementary School, and it was south. It was the next little community south of Pocatello. And so I would have started teaching with my 2 years there because they were impressed with my lesson plans and my participation in class, and recommended me for a teaching position. So when we went to California, I gave up my teaching opportunity. Reed had the whole football parking lot as his playground, and one time I lost him then, and he had gone with his tricycle into the stadium, and there was a winding walkway up to the bleachers on one side, and he had taken his tricycle, I don't know how he got it up there, and he rode it down and lost control and crashed into whatever part of the building, the fence, whatever was at the bottom of that, but no damage done. He had a little turtle, you know, the little teeny turtles that are about that big around, because we couldn't have a pet in that, so we bought him this little turtle, and we lost the turtle in the apartment, and we looked, and we couldn't find it, and we thought, we don't know what happened to it, and it must have been a long time later, long enough that I didn't think a turtle could survive. One day I'm sitting in the living room, and here walks this little turtle. I don't know whether he'd been hibernating or what, somewhere in the house behind some piece of furniture, and we fed him, and he revived, and we had him there through the year. It was so cold that year that our car would park in front of the house, and we got an extension cord and plugged it into electricity so that it some way it warmed, kept the battery warm so that we could start the car in the winter when it was so cold. But Dean and Joyce Thomas were our good friends, and there was quite a group of former athletes that were still there that were married, so we had a built-in social group. on campus. And that was the year, of course, no, I'm backing up. When Reed Jr. got his little Letterman sweater as a baby, that's when we were undergraduate students, by one of the professors of English that loved the athletes. So I can't think of too much more. It was a sweet experience for me to get to know all those coaches and to work with them. And I can't remember, I think I must have just worked there in the afternoons. I don't think it would have worked for me to have been there full time. I think it was just a half a day when I worked in that athletic office. But it gave us enough money that helped us to get through.